Today we're creating a shockwave blast inspired by characters like Quake and Black Canary. Welcome to Backyard Filmmaking. I'm your host Chris, and in today's episode we're creating an effect that is quite common when you look at it. I mean, the character Quake uses it from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Black Canary uses it in Arrow, and even Shuri from Black Panther has a pretty similar effect. It's that shockwave blast. This effect relies on a lot of distortion and shockwaves moving throughout this distortion, so that's what we're going to have to create in HITFILM Pro. I say HITFILM Pro because we're going to be using the particle simulator effect in order to create the distortion, and the particle simulator can only be found in HITFILM Pro. But I'm sure there's a way to almost translate this effect from Pro into Express. Comment it below if you think you have an idea. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the HITFILM forum. I put up a post requesting some suggestions on how to create the effect, and a lot of people responded giving me various videos to help me stitch together a unique effect, so I just wanted to thank them. Without further ado, let's get started. This supersonic blast effect, whether it be Quake, Black Canary, or even Shuri, has one common denominator. That would be shockwaves moving across the distortion. Due to this, we'll need to grab a shockwave asset. These are quite easy to find across the web, however, my destination for this asset was productioncrate.com. I downloaded the shockwave bird's eye view asset, but like I said, you can really use any shockwave asset you desire. Now, I just have to wait for this to download, then I'll open up HITFILM. Here we are, HITFILM Pro. The only other asset we'll need is a soft circle PNG, which I got from a Rody Polis video, in which he creates a bullet time effect in HITFILM Pro. This was one of the tutorials that the forum suggested, and I used it to stitch together a unique effect. The link to the picture that I will be using for this circle will be in the description. Nevertheless, you can definitely just create a plane and then make this inside HITFILM. I also had my base footage, which is simply me jutting out my hand and pretending to have some shockwaves radiating from my palm. Let's get started by right-clicking the footage and clicking Make Composite Shot, then OK. Next, as usual, it's time to trim down your clip to its desired length. Everything is now prepared. With that, let's get started by creating the distortion. For this, we'll need to create a path for the distortion to follow along. To do this, we'll need to create a new point. I renamed mine Path. We'll be keyframing this point across the footage to make the path. I began this process by rearranging the point and placing it near my hand towards the point in the clip in which my hand is placed outwards. With this, I accessed the position controls for the point and hit the keyframe. I then traveled to the end of the clip and zoomed out, then moved the point all the way to the right. Our path is now created. With this, we can drop in a new particle simulator into the composite shop. We're now going to need to parent this particle simulator to the path. To do this, we need to open up the emitter settings and then go down to shape. With that, select the path point besides the attach to layer settings. With the particles now moving along our set path, we've got a lot of work to do in order to make these particles look more like the effect we're trying to replicate. First off, let's drop in the ball PNG. With this imported, go into the particle settings and open up the appearance settings. Then, change the texture source to layer and make the source layer the ball PNG. We've now textured the particles as the ball, which initially looks quite goofy, but serves as a good basis for the effect. I'm going to be hiding the initial ball PNG, then accessing the scale for the particles and bumping them up just a bit. Uncheck the billboard option in appearance, then go to speed. We want a constant stream, not a jumbled mound of particles. So we'll have to slow the speed down to around 5. I'll keep the life to 1 second, maybe even a bit lower. Right now, the particles are very dense. This can be fixed by lowering the particles per second under general to around 35. A lot of these changes really depend on the effect you're trying to create. With the basis finally built up, we can get to creating the real distortion. In order to do this, we're going to have to turn the particle sim and the ball PNG into a composite shot. Without doing this, we can't use the particle simulator as a source layer when applying the displacement effect. In order to create this composite shot, select the particle simulator, the softball PNG, and the path point, then right-click them and click Make Composite Shot. That's all we have to do. Now go back to your main composite shot and drop on a displacement effect to your base footage. With that, change the source layer for the displacement effect to the composite shot that had the particle simulator in it. Obviously, there's still no change, even if you turn up the effect. To change this, hide the composite shot with the particle simulator in it. Now, when altering the settings of the displacement effect, there is finally a difference. For myself, I selected the settings of the max horizontal displacement as negative 266.2 and the max vertical displacement as negative 102.4. This creates some nice distortion, but I'd like a bit more. For this, I threw on an energy distortion effect to my base footage. I selected my composite shot with my particle simulator in it as the mask for the effect. I then set the distortion to 37.5 and its scale to 130.8. Finally, the distortion is created. The last piece of this effect is implementing the SHOCKWAVE asset that we downloaded earlier. I placed this asset into my timeline and increased its scale. To really put this asset into my scene, I changed the SHOCKWAVE to a 3D element. Using this to my advantage, I turned the asset so it would seem like it could move along the distortion. I then sped up the asset to around 500%. I keyframed the position of this asset so it began near my palm, then quickly, only several frames later, moved out of frame. I had also placed a hue shift effect onto the asset and bumped up the lightness so the shockwave was more gray. With this completed, all I had to do was copy and paste this edited asset a bit after the one before it, so a stream then radiated with the distortion. The effect itself is done. All I had to do now was add some sound effects and a bit of music, and then the entire effect was complete. That's how you create the effect. If you have a basic knowledge of the particle simulator and know how to keyframe and use 3D elements, then I think this effect is easy for the most part. I definitely had a fun time making it myself. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Backyard Filmmaking. If you enjoyed, don't be afraid to hit that like button or even subscribe. If you have any other suggestions, tell us in the comments below, and thanks for watching.